Hey, what's up? I'm going to make an introduction video. At first I thought about it, then I decided not to make it. Then I got a few comments in my comment section that said I should make one, just kind of describing my background and who I am. So I thought, well, why not? I guess I'll make one. Since my channel's still relatively new and just getting started. So I guess I'll give a history, a real brief nutshell of a history of my life in music, kind of where it all started and how I ended up where I'm at. I remember the first real memory I have, I guess I was in kindergarten. We had our teacher, we had a piano player there, and we'd sit around and sing songs. And they had a bass drum, and they'd choose different kids to play the bass drum in the class. They never chose me the whole year. I never got to play the drum. And I remember thinking to myself in kindergarten, I could do this better than all those kids could do it. I just kind of thought that in my head. And I never got to play the bass drum much. I was, I guess, a little disappointed then. But that was kind of my first memory of music. And then for Christmas, I remember, the next thing I kind of remember is my brother got a toy drum set for Christmas, and I got an acoustic guitar. Eventually, we kind of traded. I thought, well, I want to play the drums. I ended up playing with him a bunch anyways, and I guess I kind of played with both of them. He played with the guitar more than me. I played with the drums more than him, so we ended up trading the drums out for the guitar. So I played with those for quite a little while. Then I remember I got my first stereo, like my first real stereo. A cassette recorder on it, played vinyl albums, all the 8-track player on it, all the stuff was on there. And I got Kiss double platinum album, and I got Beach Boys live. Never listened to the Beach Boys, but played the Kiss all the time on my drums. And I didn't really know how to play the drums, but I just kind of play along to the album. And then I would tape myself because I had a tape recorder / player on the stereo. I remember recording myself playing along to the Kiss album, and then I took it to some of the neighborhood kids and played it and told them that I was playing along to this album, and they didn't believe me. They said, "No, you're not playing that, blah, blah, blah," and they argued with me, and I was a little frustrated. And I got home and got to thinking about it and thought, well, I must be doing pretty good at this if they can't tell that I'm playing along with it. So I remember making some new recordings of it, and on purpose trying to make little glitches in it or play off the beat, I guess, so they could kind of hear me playing the drums, and played it for them. Then they could kind of hear me playing along with it. But it kind of got in my head at that point that, maybe I could do this, I guess. If I was playing, at least I didn't really know how to play the drums. I was playing in time with the album enough that they couldn't really tell the difference between me and Peter Criss, who was the drummer for Kiss at that time. So that kind of started me, I think, at least in my head, that I was able to do this. So I did that for quite a little while. I remember going downstairs sometimes. My bedroom was upstairs with my drums and my stereo. Going downstairs, my parents had a big stereo, and I'd put that on and play really loud with some of their albums and stuff. They had different stuff. Then I got the bright idea, because, it was the 70s. A lot of bands would wreck all of their equipment and stuff when they, at the end of the concert or whatever. And so I took my drum. Luckily, I was smart enough to take them outside, but I thought, I'm going to play my drums and pretend I'm in a Kiss concert, and then I'm going to set them on fire. So I set my drums on fire at the end of my concert outside, burned them all up. Needless to say, I didn't have any drums for a long time after that. And I thought it was cool until I didn't have any drums. The cymbal didn't burn up. The bass drum beater thing didn't burn up. And, of course, I had the sticks because they were in my hands. So I still had sticks and some things to kind of play on. Then my sister's got this little Fisher-Price plastic drum with toys in it, maracas and whatever was in it. So I stole the drum part. I had a metal rack, like an album rack. I don't know if you remember the old metal racks where you keep your vinyl records. I put the Fisher-Price drum on there, I mounted what was left over the cymbal stand on there, and my bass drum beater would click on the bottom. I set it up on the bottom so it would click on the metal post on the bottom of the rack, and I had a metal globe, and that sat on the side, and that was kind of my hi-hat. I played that for a long time. It was kind of my drum set, and I just kept practicing and practicing with that. And then eventually, my mom got me a used drum set. Old, little wore out, but it was a for real drum set. So that was my first real drum set I had. And then one of my uncles, I believe, bought me a snare drum to go with it. So I had a few things to kind of play with. And that was kind of like a highlight of my life. I got my first real drums. And a couple years later, my grandma bought me a brand new drum set. So I played that for a lot of years. And I started playing in bands, teenage bands as I was growing up. I also remember I played, growing up my family was religious, Christian religious, and we went to a church that didn't have any music. We could sing, but they didn't believe in music, so there's no music in the church. And then we switched church, and we went to the Salvation Army, and we're sitting there waiting for church to start, and this curtain opens up, and here's this 50-piece brass band, bum, 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 and it's like super, super loud, and they got snare drums and cymbals crashing and bass drums and all these horns and stuff, and it was kind of a shocker to us because we had never seen nothing like that before in church, and they had a band for the adults and they had a kids band, and I ended up joining the kids band and played with the adult band a little bit here and there, and kind of got started on learning to actually play the drums a little bit as far as reading music and playing with an organized group, and then, like I said, I got into playing with my friends and stuff, making bands, especially when I could drive. I remember when I turned 16, I got in a band with one of my best friends, and we'd go to each other's houses and haul all of our equipment back and forth, and those were the years I was kind of learning to play music, I guess. And then I kind of got it in my head at this point when I was playing with my friends and stuff that I kind of wanted to be a musician because my friends did too. And I got this book. I don't know if my grandfather gave me the book or if I bought it at the local bookstore or where I got it. But if I remember, it was called Making Money, Making Music. And looking back, I kind of followed that book to a T. It wasn't a book about becoming famous or a rock star or some recording artist or something. It was a practical book about what it's really probably going to be like to be a musician. And I kind of did all the things in that book. It says, you're not probably going to get rich. You're not going to, you might tour a little bit or do this or that, but you're not, becoming a rock star. You might as well just play the lottery. Just as much chance of winning the lottery as becoming a rock star. It's going to be way less work. So, it mentioned things like teaching lessons and working at a music store and, of course, playing in bands and stuff and doing fill-in work. And I kind of did all those things as it went. But it was kind of an influential book because it gave me the idea of what it was going to be like to be a working, practical musician, which is really what I was. I'm not famous. I was never famous. I never did anything spectacular. I just kind of did all the practical things of music as I went. But I remember that book was kind of influential in the path that I would take as a musician. And of course, I kind of kept practicing, played in better and better bands, once I could drive and stuff. And then I guess I was 18, decided to quit school. I was just going to be a rock and roll star playing bands. And I was in a pretty good band at that time. I did that for a little while. Then somewhere around 19 years old, I decided I didn't want to play drums no more. I wanted to play piano. So I went out and bought an acoustic piano at the local music store. They brought it to my house, drug it all the way up the stairs, broke the banister on the stairs trying to get it up and around the banister area, and in my bedroom, which was all the way. It was kind of a hassle getting it up there, but studied the piano, got okay at it, figured it out. I wasn't like a great piano player, but I at least figured out how the thing worked, and started studying music theory, which I really found very fascinating and kind of became obsessed with over the years. All through my life I've been obsessed with music theory. Never really performed on the piano, but I started teaching lessons, started at the local music store, went to a few people's houses. Meanwhile, I had met my now wife. We were engaged for a long period of time while I was kind of doing this, and then we got married. Thought it'd be a great idea to quit my job after we got married and teach piano. That didn't work out too well. So I had to get another job. Um, Eventually, I stopped teaching piano and just worked for like a year. Didn't do anything with music. Um, and then I got a job at the local music store. Um, I was there about probably 2 or 3 months, and then I went out and bought a drum set and started trying out for bands, playing in bands, and quickly went down to part-time at the music store. Did all kinds of stuff at this point on drums. I played for the local theater group, whatever I could, anything I could find to do. I wouldn't turn down anything, whether it paid or not. I just wanted to get in now. You know, I was in my young 20s and time to start my career up. And I remember I was training out a bunch of people. I did a lot of stuff, and finally got a group of people over, and I heard the singer, and he had a groove in his voice that I just liked. And that was, I was convinced at that point I was going to join this band, and we kind of got the band going together. We were in a dance band, we were in a big band, we were in a club band, we were a trio. We started out as 4 people, we ended up being a trio. We did a lot of parties, a lot of dinner bars, small bars, but we worked a lot. We worked 5 nights a week for a summer. I remember we had early Wednesday nights, and then Sunday matinees at a boat bar, and then it left. Back then it was 3 nights a week at all the bars, so we could play 5 nights a week back then, and that was kind of nice. Did that for 3 years. Worked pretty full time with them for 3 years, and I was playing drums. I had my dream drum set. I had a couple extra drum sets. The whole while, I remember, even when I was young, I was probably 14 or so when I started buying sound equipment. So. And building my own speaker cabinets. I got an amp that I had bought when I first sold my drums and started playing piano and keyboards. I got an amp over there. I'll make a video on it. It's a really cool amp. It's the oldest piece of music equipment I got. Anyway, the whole time I was very fascinated with audio, pro audio and stuff. And at this point, when I was playing in the band, we were living in a house that we were renting. We had a basement, so I kind of built a little studio down there. Built a really nice big sound system, big speakers. Just kept adding up equipment. Working at the music store was a huge plus. Anyone starting in music, that's great advice. I had gotten that from that book, Making Money Making Music, and you get to know everybody in the industry that's in your local area. You know, you get the good deals on equipment. You get to know what you should pay for it. You're just right there in the middle of it all. So those were really productive years of my life for getting my career started. I remember the first time I got paid. We were playing. I think it was for AT&T, one of their facilities. They were having a party for their employees. We got hired to play at this party. I remember I made $50 that night. It was the first time I got paid to play music. I remember thinking to myself, I'm a professional now. But it was kind of a landmark time for me because I spent my whole life trying to learn how to do this, and I finally got paid to do it. So that was a kind of a vivid memory that was really kind of a mark in my career. And then after about 3 years of that band, I decided to quit the band, got out of that band. And I was always fascinated by the bass guitar, so I thought I want to play bass guitar. So I bought a bass guitar and some things, sold my drums. Don't ask me why. Every time I switch instruments, I sell the instruments I got. Don't do that, by the way. It's not a good idea. I've had like 12 drum sets in my life, and they're always more money when you have to buy them again. And you sell them for half the price, and you go buy another one, and the price goes up. I've done it on all my instruments my whole life. Switch instruments, sell all my instruments. If I would have kept them, I would have a music store with the stuff by now. But anyway, I sold my drums, got into playing bass, wanted to play bass, started learning it, went through the whole thing of playing in a whole bunch of different bands. And I remember the first band I got into playing bass, I didn't really know how to play the bass. I had rhythm because I played drums, and I could play with it and maybe make some things that kind of sounded neat, but I didn't know what I was doing very well. And there was a guy that worked at the music store with me. He was a piano player, and he wanted to learn how to play drums. So he kind of made this dare amongst each other. This band came up, and they were looking for a bass player and a drummer. I says, all right, I'll go try out for bass in this band if you go out and try out for drums. And we go there together, just kind of as maybe a joke a little bit. But we also did want to play those instruments. We had no idea about the band. It was actually a working band that had a 2 or 3 months before their scheduled job, there were some people quitting. So anyway, I show up at the place to try out for bass, and the guy who was going to show up to try out for drums doesn't even show up. So there I am by myself. I don't know how to play bass, so I thought, well, so I went in. It just so happened that their drummer decided to stay in the band, so they didn't really need a drummer after all. They just needed the bass player. And there I am as a country band. Didn't know anything about country music. Didn't know how to play the bass. So I'm there trying to, I mean, I had an idea about music. I had studied piano and I played drums, but didn't really know how to play the instrument. And the guitar player would show me chords or whatever, and on the simpler songs I could kind of catch on to what the chords were. And I think he's seen that the songs that were simple that I could catch on to, he's seen I had groove. He's seen I had rhythm and that I could make the song groove. He noticed that. So he wanted me in the band, even though I had to kind of learn what I was doing. So I had to go out and spend a couple $100 on country CDs because I didn't know anything about country music. And got in the band, we started working, had to really cram to get working. Even when we started our first paying jobs, I still didn't really know what I was doing, but I kind of learned as I went. Country is nice music to start on for a lot of things because it follows the rules a lot. It's like a 1-2-5 progression, or 1-7, or like a 1-6-4-5 progression. All the standard chord progressions that you would see in music 10 million times over. Country follows that a lot. And the bass lines are pretty straightforward, a lot of stride bass, which I really like playing, the 1s and 5s. So it was really helpful to start in a country band instead of a rock band, and that's kind of how I got started on bass. And we worked for about 3 years. It was a pretty steady band. Made a decent amount of money. We weren't getting rich. It was, the band had a lot of issues and drama, but it was a working band, and I really learned how to play bass in that. And then, meanwhile, the whole time working at the music store, I was always fascinated with sound systems, and part of my job at the music store was installing sound systems for churches and schools. I did repairs on amplifiers, music instruments, electronic equipment. I actually got into building my own amplifiers. I was very fascinated by amplifiers my whole life at this time, and I was still teaching lessons at the music store, and got out of the country band. Kind of went back and forth between bass and drums. Played in a lot of different bands. This was sort of the middle of my career, and I was doing everything that was in that book I had mentioned earlier, Making Money, Making Music. I was playing in bands. I would fill in, if somebody needed a musician. I remember people called the music store, we need a drummer, or we need this or that, and I just asked how much they were paying and take the job if it was something I thought I could do. I filled in on bass and a few things. Taught lessons on bass guitar, drums, and piano. Repaired instruments. Like I said, installed sound systems. Did a little bit with lighting work, mostly for some of the bars that we played at. I did all the repairs on the equipment for the bands, especially the last band I was in. And then I went through back and forth between bass guitar and drums at this point. And then I got in the last band I was in. And this is all a span of maybe 20 years that this all kind of went on, I guess, 20, 30, 40, about 20-year span. And I got my last band that I played in, I was playing bass. I had kind of figured the bass out pretty good by this point. And we eventually became the most employed band in town. I don't know if we were technically the best band, but we worked every single weekend for like 6 years straight. We never got a weekend off. We would be booked like a year ahead, and the business manager of the band would tell us, I'm going to start booking for the year, so everyone would put in for their time off. We'd all try to take the same week or two off. I remember a time in that band when there was 5 of us, and only one of us even had a job outside of the band. Not that we were getting rich or anything, but it was a real steady band, and I was really quite satisfied that I accomplished the band thing through this. And then I was getting older, a lot of drugs and alcohol, and I had become a bit of an alcoholic through all of this, just because it was part of the lifestyle. To give you kind of a dateline, I live in Michigan, and I quit that band just before they banned smoking in the bars in Michigan. I don't know how long ago it was. It's got to be 10 years ago now, but and the band is actually still together. They don't play full time anymore, but they're still together as a band. So kudos to them for sticking it out that long. But I had gotten out of it. And then I tried to get back into drumming, but I was getting older and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Then time passed a little bit, and then my wife was going to this small church who needed a piano player. They had a choir and singing and stuff, and they wanted a piano player. They didn't have a piano player. They were just singing along to canned music. So their music director contacted me, and I kept saying, no, I can't come there and play piano. I don't know. I mean, I know how to play piano, but I'm not good enough to do this, let alone accompany a choir, and I'm not a very good note reader. I understand how it works, but I don't, my eyes, my hands don't match up very well, and I kept saying no. But she offered me decent money. I was making just as much at that church as I made in the band, and I didn't have to haul no equipment, so it actually turned out to be a good job. Eventually I agreed to do it, and she's like, just come and do what you can do. We won't be judgmental. You can just do what you can do. We'll be happy to have somebody here playing piano. So I finally agreed to do it. Kind of craning for it. Didn't know what I was doing. But I kind of got it figured out. I played with them for, I don't know, at least 8 years. And I think I got pretty decent at the piano in those 8 years. It was nice because I figured out how to improvise my way through everything. I was afraid I was going to have to read the music, which I've never done. I've been a rock and roll bar musician, so, you don't read music in the bars, obviously. You just kind of learn the songs. And I've always improvised everything all my life anyways. I've always been that kind of musician. And so I learned, that I can just get the chord charts in the church for the songs they're singing or whatever's going on. If they're doing plays or the choir or whatever, and I could just improvise the parts and I could make it work. And it's really where I learned to improvise piano. And my favorite thing there was before church and at the end of church, I could just do whatever I wanted. So I got really good at that. I remember one thing that was really interesting to me, especially during COVID, there was me and a violin player there. And she was kind of classically trained. Didn't improvise very well at all, but you could give her a sheet of music and she could just play it. And I couldn't read the music, but I could improvise stuff. So we were complete opposites. And we couldn't do what each other did, but when we played together, it worked out really, really well. And we had a lot of fun because it was COVID, we couldn't sing, so we could do whatever kind of music we wanted. We did Suicide is Painless from MASH because there was no words, so you didn't have to hear. It was just a pretty song we did. I remember Open Arms from Journey, which is actually a love song, but without the words, it's just pretty music. And we did a lot of fun stuff. We did the theme from Laverne and Shirley, and Thank You for Being a Friend from the Golden Girls, and a lot of TV music, and just a lot of fun stuff. And that's kind of where I learned to play piano. And I already knew music theory super well, so it was easy to, once I figured out I could improvise off the chord charts and just make the parts work and combine what I heard in my head with what's written on the page and what they're doing out there, it just kind of became intuitive after a few years. And then that all kind of ended about a year and a half or so ago, and then I was thinking, what do I want to do next? I just had a job and wasn't really doing much with my life, and I remember I had a dream at night, and it said, what do you want to do with your life? Just want to, what do you want to do? I wasn't doing anything, and I thought, I got a skill. I've been a musician my whole life. I should do something with it. But so I started getting back into it. Meanwhile, I had built this whole studio in my house because, I had played with the church for a long time, and I always liked audio equipment, and I built a whole new studio and had all my equipment that I had here. So I thought, well, I'll start up another band or whatever, and jam with a few people, and I don't know, I didn't know if I wanted to do that. I didn't have any road equipment. I didn't want to go out and spend $12,000 buying stuff for the road. And I didn't know if I wanted to haul this equipment. I mean, I'm 54 years old now, and I want to drag, you spend more time dragging equipment around when you're a musician than you do playing, and I didn't know if I wanted to go back to that. And then I remember I was watching on TV, I seen this thing that's called The Making of Pornhub, of all the things, and so I thought, I'll watch that. And this lady comes on there and she's like, yeah, in the early days you could just make a video and upload it. And you could I guess your art, if you want to call it that, they could, and then if they were good at it, they could sell advertising or whatever and make a little bit of money. I thought, that's an idea. Maybe I'll make a YouTube channel. I can make videos and upload it and kind of maybe take my music career in a little different direction that way. So that's kind of, I guess, what I'm doing now. So all that being said, that's a nutshell. Hopefully not too long. Hopefully I didn't bore everybody with it, but a couple of people made comments saying I should do this. So I kind of got thinking about what I want this channel to be about. Since this is an introduction, I'll give you a rundown of what my vision of the channel is. I really don't want it to be about me. That's why I decided not to do this introduction until a couple of people mentioned I should. But what I kind of want the channel to be about is entertaining and educational, I guess, would be the way to put it. Because I made money making music, followed the book that I had mentioned, and I did it. I'm quite satisfied that I did it. I was not a rock star. I was, if you think of a practical working musician living in a small town that traveled maybe 70 to 100 mile radius around the town, did everything you could think to do in the local area, from civic theaters to filling in to teaching lessons and playing in bands and whatever I could think to do to make money in the music industry, I did. So I got all this knowledge background. I taught lessons for years, and I thought, maybe that's kind of what I'm going to make this channel about, is just to kind of share all that with everybody else, people coming up, people who want to be musicians, what it's really going to be like to be a musician. I did look into cruise ships, I looked into traveling, I looked into studio work, but I'm really a homebody. I didn't want to live on the road. And just because you're traveling, touring, or any of that, it doesn't mean you're going to make any money. In fact, I played cover bands all my life because I wanted to get paid, and most of the bars aren't going to pay you to play originals. You can go to the bigger clubs and sell tickets and get paid by the head, but you got to be able to fill up the bar with 500 people just to make anything, and then usually you're still not making much money. So that's kind of what I want this channel to be about. Is I'll play a bunch of different music on my instruments and for entertainment's sake, and for those who want to listen to it and talk about it and talk about sound equipment. I want to get into, because I've always had a fascination with sound equipment, at least old school equipment, and I built my own amplifiers. Go through some of that stuff, and just going to share my life history and knowledge of what I've gained over the years as a musician and what it's actually like to be a musician. And so hopefully that's a reasonable enough introduction that's not too boring, and maybe give some background to actually who I am and what I've done and how I got where I'm at. I've got a subscribe thing on my videos down there now, so hit the subscribe button and subscribe. And if you've got a subscription and you've got like a YouTube, especially if you got a YouTube subscription, but I think if you subscribe to anything, it'll pop up and tell you when I've got new videos coming out. I'm going to try to get out one a week, maybe put out a few shorts here and there, maybe like put out a video of me playing an instrument or something along with something else. But I need subscribers. Getting a decent amount of views, but I need subscribers, so hit that subscribe button and subscribe. And hopefully this was something that somebody will want to watch, and we'll see you in my next video.